Infowars Nightly News. I'm David Knight, and it's May 8th, 2014. Here are our top stories.
Tonight, Rand Paul strikes back against drones targeting Americans. Then, control freaks in Michigan begin their ban on animals in the backyard. And how sheriffs plan to turn a house of worship into a den of snitches. That's next on the Infowars Nightly News.
The money changers, the manipulators of society, they're the real enemy, they're the plague. And Christ beat them with a whip and overturned their tables.
Well, a Senate confirmation hearing may shed light on the legal arguments for killing U.S. citizens with drones. In an article from Steve Watson today, he points out that Rand Paul is going to be joined by Senator Grassley in a fight to release memos justifying drone strikes on U.S. citizens. Now, those memos are secret memos. Do you think that we really want a judge who thinks it's all right to kill American citizens without a trial? And why can't we see these memos? Why aren't they being made public? Well, they may be made public because of this confirmation hearing for David Barron. Now, he was someone who argued on behalf of the Department of Justice in favor of assassinating American citizens abroad using drones. Now, Chuck Grassley, who is a ranking Republican on the Senate Judiciary Committee, said that they know that he's author of at least one of these. He may have written 9 others. And they argue that we have a legal right to know why American citizens would be targeted abroad with drone strikes. He says, we know the Department of Justice relied on the legal arguments Professor Barron formulated to justify the targeted killing of an American citizen in a tribal region of Yemen in September 2011. Now, the interesting fact about this is that the White House has offered to show this memo privately to senators, but Rand Paul will have nothing to do with that. This is something that the public needs to know. We need to know what's happening in our secret courts, just like the FISA court. FISA was originally set up to rein in the CIA after the Church Committee hearings. It was to limit intelligence gathering to foreign operations. That's why it's the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. What happened is that court, which was supposed to oversee that, has now become a secret star chamber itself, where there is no adversarial hearing, only one judge, no jury, not even multiple judges, and only the government's side is being heard. And they're saying that these decisions are having the effect of modifying our body of law, just as if they were modifying or amending the Constitution. That has to stop. But this is the arrogance of the government, that we cannot even see the legal arguments that they use to try to justify their killing of Americans abroad. Now, how much worse can it get? Well, when government sees itself as God, I imagine they want to put themselves in churches so they can be worshiped. And that's what we see happening here in Hanover County. We now have a worship watch being offered by the Hanover County Sheriff's Department in Virginia. They say, your safety is our passion. And they say that their mission is to reduce crime and the fear of crime in houses of worship and areas that are frequented by the faith community. Actually, what they're trying to do is they're trying to create fear and paranoia and offer themselves as a solution. This is what they're going to tell people that they get as members. These are the benefits. You can be designated sheriff's office personnel who are ready to serve you. Also, you can get electronic communications that are going to keep you afraid of what's happening. Regular meetings designed to further their partnership with you. And then, of course, materials and resources that can educate everybody in the church to be afraid of what's going on and to run to the government for protection. Now, Chuck Baldwin has talked about this. He's talked about the 501c3 churches who essentially have become corporations and how they're being used by the government to spy, to manipulate the public in many cases. As he points out, in reality, the American church today, on the whole, is not even a church. It's a government corporation whose loyalty is offered first to Caesar, not to Christ, whose message is first politically correct before it is biblically correct. That's Chuck Baldwin reporting on that. Now, as we see that we're heading down the same path as other totalitarian governments like China, where they have a corporate church that is a very useful instrument for them, where they can control people, we see that the vital church, as Christians come under persecution, is going to be the local home church. So what do? Well, another county in Virginia, this one is the county of Fairfax, Virginia. The American Center for Law and Justice pointed out that the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors is trying to create an ordinance that will limit the right to assemble And of course, that's going to have a big impact on home Bible studies. The proposed ordinance would limit the number of people allowed to assemble in the privacy of your home to 49 and do it no more than 3 times in a 40-day period. Now, at a staff meeting that Jay Sekulow attended, he said that they admitted that they had noise and parking ordinances that they could enforce if it becomes a problem, but that they need something to control the number of people there. And he pointed out to them at the time that the Supreme Court has specifically said that it would be a violation of the Constitution to have an ordinance that would make criminal the exercise of the right of assembly simply because its exercise could be annoying to some people. Well, Big Agra is certainly going to be annoyed at this new law from Vermont. The governor has just signed the first in the U.S. GMO-labeling law that will go into effect. Now, as a footnote, Connecticut last year was actually the first state to pass an ordinance like that, but they required 4 other states to go first. They will be the 5th one to require GMO labeling. This law is going to go into effect in July 2016, and he signed this bill into law today, Thursday. Now, they expect Monsanto and DuPont to sue the state. They're already creating a legal defense fund, and they've allocated so far $1.5 million for that. They're going to need a lot more to defend themselves from Monsanto, as we've seen in California and elsewhere. Now, the Center for Food Safety says that there's currently 63 active genetically modified organism labeling bills in 23 states, and 32 of those bills have been introduced since January. So this is a coming trend. We should be able to know what is in our food, just like we should be able to know what our judges think in terms of legal opinions. But everything is being hidden from us now. We have these secret agendas from the government, from the Department of Justice, from the judges, from the FISA court, and of course, on our food. We're not allowed to know what's in that. Now, they also point out in this article that GMO labeling is required in 64 countries, including the European Union. Now, that would be labeling. I'm sure they can import food in there. There are bans on the growing of GMO crops in Europe as well. Now, listen to this quote from Consumer Reports Food and Safety Sustainability Center. They say companies shouldn't be able to do an end run by slapping a natural label on a product that contains GMOs. But unfortunately, they're allowed to do so today. And that's the very point. They're not natural foods, and yet they can portray it that way, as even as an organic food, because they don't have a pesticide sprayed on it. That's right. The pesticide is in it. Now, we see this struggle going on with the big agricultural companies. We also see that the small agricultural firms, the small farmers, even people who are trying to grow their own food, are being hammered by governments as they set up a system that will keep us from feeding ourselves real food and put us on the corporate dole. This is a story from Christina Sarich, PrisonPlanet.com. The right to farm is being stripped from citizens. Michigan can now ban animals in backyards. She says Michigan has ruled that local governments can now ban any animal they desire from a small family farm. That's backyards and small acreage. Well, small acreage can include, as one of these pointed out, 80 acres. Most people would not consider that to be small if you live in the city or in the suburbs, but they can ban chickens, they can ban beekeeping, goat herding, and many other things. Stay with us. Right after the break, we've got an update on what's going on in Albuquerque, New Mexico. If you remember earlier in the week, the people there tried to arrest the police chief because they're upset with the way they're being treated. Stay tuned.
It saddens me again to appear in public with the Ellis family, with the Gomez family, with the Torres family, and all the families who have lost children to these rogue terrorist cops that you let still walk our streets and terrorize the public.
Just as the community in Bunkerville rallied around Cliven Bundy after snipers pointed weapons at people all week, and after several confrontations where the BLM agents got violent, in one case attacking a woman from behind and throwing her to the ground, the same sort of thing is now happening in Albuquerque, where an angry crowd showed up to a city council meeting threatening to arrest the sheriff, taking the seats of the city council. Now, in both cases, there was no violence committed by the public, but they clearly are fed up with the violence that's being committed against them. Why are the people of Albuquerque fed up? Well, as we reported before, more people have been killed by their police department than by the New York City Police Department, even though New York City has 16 times the number of people. The violent history of the Albuquerque Police Department was brought to national attention about 5 weeks ago when a homeless man was shot to death for camping. And since then, in just the last few weeks, 3 more people have been shot and killed by the Albuquerque police, and 3 of the 9 people who are on the Police Oversight Committee have resigned in disgust at the way their oversight is being rejected by the city. Now, one of the 3 people that was killed in the last 5 weeks was 19-year-old Mary Hawks. Now, her case involved the search for a stolen pickup truck. Documents in the truck led them to Mary Hawks and to a trailer park. They conduct a 5 a.m. raid on this trailer park as if they're looking for a terrorist. They block access in and out of the trailer park. They announce on loudspeakers for no one to leave their homes, to shut their windows, and that they're going to release dogs. As 19-year-old Mary Hawks flees, she is shot dead by an APD officer. And there's no video to support his story that she pointed a gun at him. No video from the shooter's camera. No video from the officers with him. Now, it's surprising that there's no video of the incident because the APD is all about lapel cameras, having placed one of the highest dollar value orders for police cameras in the country, $2 million worth of cameras bought from Taser. And the former police chief, Schultz, who now works for Taser, is being investigated by a local news station for his cozy relationship with the company, while still police chief. Emails allegedly show the police chief being given speaking engagements and perhaps employment in exchange for influence peddling. He promises that he's going to grease things for Taser with the APD. What we're seeing now with the police industrial complex mirrors what we've seen for decades with the military industrial complex. That people who are high-ranking officers and who make purchasing decisions will then retire and go to work for the very companies that are military contractors. And make no mistake about it, Taser is a military contractor. It's the militarization of our police. And when we look at this state-of-the-art $2 million camera technology that they've sold them, how likely is it that there was no recording of this event? The capability to record an entire shift with only a 40% battery charge, with a 30-second buffer once he starts recording, even if he had it in standby, it makes it pretty hard to believe that he didn't really record this incident. Now, the current police chief, Chief Eden, stopped short of calling the lack of footage a malfunction and declined to say whether the officer told investigators that he turned the camera on or not. He says he's going to send it to the manufacturer for forensic analysis to see if it functioned properly. Who knows, maybe he can get former police chief Schultz, who now works for Taser, to help him with that forensic investigation. Don't hold your breath about a detailed investigation of yet another police shooting in Albuquerque. The problems there are long-lasting and systemic. And as we consider the militarization of the police and the creation of yet another profit center for the industrial military complex, as they turn our cities into war zones, the same way they did this trailer park where Mary Hawks was shot over a stolen truck. They were not hunting down a murderer. They were not hunting down a terrorist, but they were going to lock down the entire trailer park and use dogs going house to house searching. Are the American people in Bunkerville and Albuquerque beginning to realize who the real domestic terrorists are? Well, tonight is another meeting in Albuquerque at the City Council, and they have responded to what happened on Monday, not with reforms, but with new rules. Paul Joseph Watson points out the Albuquerque City Council leadership have imposed new rules and beefed up security in an attempt to prevent a repeat of extraordinary scenes on Monday. Now, one of the people there that was leading the protest said, "I wish they would have moved as quickly as they have regarding these changes on the question of APD violence." That's exactly it. Instead of saying, we're sorry, we're going to stop the police from terrorizing people on the streets, we're going to do something about it, instead they just say, shut up. And they double down on the police state. Now, as we pointed out in that report, a lot more people are shot in Albuquerque than in New York, even though New York has 16 times the population. But of course, in New York, they still love to do their beatings. And this is a story from Adon Salazar, We see, smile, you're on camera. Surveillance video catches a Long Island cops beating a man. Now, the irony of this is that it appears that the reason they were beating this young man is because they had pulled him over several times earlier and he had filmed them, wondering why he's being harassed. They threatened him and said, you do that next time and you're going to get a beating. Well, they made good on that threat. And as you can see, Kyle Howell, 20 years old from Westbury, was pulled over by the police, and as they're going through his car, he says his paycheck started to fly out the door. I went to go reach for it. The next thing you know, I got a knee to the face. The next thing I remember, I was in the hospital. And you can see the damage that happened. It's pretty amazing, the beating that he got. And his mother said at a press conference, she said, there was no mercy shown as they broke the bones in his face. We live in fear of those who are sworn to protect him. He would have no voice if there were no video. And that's exactly what happened. This young man was taking video to protect himself. That made the cops angry. They decided that they would beat him to a pulp. And yet there was video. Now the cops are going to have to explain that. Hopefully they will be taken off of the police force, but that doesn't usually happen. Look at this case. This young man was not nearly as fortunate. He didn't get a beating. He was killed. A 17-year-old was killed after a confounding police encounter during which the cops slammed him to the ground, shattered his ribs, pepper sprayed him, and shoved a sharp object down his throat. Now, this was part of a sting. They had an 18-year-old who said who was going to set him up for drugs. Probably this 18-year-old was the one who was doing drugs. They probably turned him. But basically, the police started running at him, did not identify themselves as police. They were not dressed as police. He ran. That set off their prey instinct, apparently. Just like a wild animal, you have to stand down wild animals. We've talked about this many times. Whether it's the government or whether it's the police, we have to stand up to them when we run from them. Either metaphorically or in real life, that's when they get really bad. And unfortunately, they took this young man down and they killed him. Well, maybe you're one of these people who think you have nothing to fear from the police, that you follow all the millions of laws that are out there. You don't violate anything. Well, maybe you're not counting on the surveillance state. Remember, it was just a few days ago that we reported about the lawyer who had guns pulled on him. The police pulled him over and pulled out their guns. Why? Because a license plate reader identified his car as a stolen car. Joe Biggs has more information on those license plate readers.
All right, class, open your books to page 1 of License Plate Recognition 101. Let's learn the facts about LPR. LPR means license plate recognition. It's a technology currently being used by law enforcement across the country.
You're on the bed now.
Here's law enforcement today without LPR.
771-746-J11.
Here's life with LPR.
License plate readers have been popping up nationwide at an alarming rate. Now, they're mounted anywhere from a cop car to an overpass, a bridge, ATMs, and even traffic stops. Vigilant Solutions is a company that claims to have the largest license plate data storage at nearly 2 billion, and they keep that in the National Vehicle Location Services. Now they say that the database is used by law enforcement and others to track down stolen vehicles, illegal immigrants, and find kidnapped victims. Now, the implementation of mass LPR data mining possesses a serious threat to personal privacy and other civil liberties. It doesn't just store your license plate data according to ACLU. It stores everything from your car's make and model, photographs of your car, driver, and a date and time. That data is then pulled into a regional sharing system. In a 2011 report by the International Association of Chiefs of Police, they stated that recording driving habits could implicate First Amendment concerns. Specifically, LPR systems have the ability to record vehicles, attendance at locations or events that, although lawful and public, may be considered private. In such locations as addiction counseling meetings, a doctor's office, or a political rally. Now, after so many of these pieces get put together, law enforcement will be able to pinpoint your exact location. Now, each city and state have different laws on the amount of time that they hold that data, ranging from anywhere from 48 hours to indefinitely. Now, the scary part is, as they share this information, banks, whenever you stop at an ATM, can then take that data if you're late on a car payment and send that to a repo man and take your car. Now, if we don't get a hold of this database in some way, this opens the door for corruption. Now, cops with grudges or anyone else that has access to this data can use this against you in a serious way. We've got to find a way to regulate this and get a hold of it.
Well, Dan Benandi is in Newport, Connecticut at the Sandy Hook hearings. He's talking to school safety consultant Wolfgang Halbig. Now, Halbig is there asking the committee why they won't give him any of his FOIA requests and why he was threatened when he asked for information.
Dan Benandi for Infowars.com, and we're at the city of Newtown, Connecticut. They're having a hearing on the Sandy Hook incident, and with me is Wolfgang Halbig. How you doing, sir?
Oh, great. Thanks for seeing me again.
Absolutely. I just got a couple questions today. One is what inspired you? What led you to start investigating Sandy Hook?
Well, you know what? I didn't have a chance to tell the school board members tonight, but you know what? When the Connecticut State Police sends police officers to my house and they threaten me and they tell me that I can no longer ask questions about the Sandy Hook school shooting, I kept thinking, isn't there freedom of speech here somewhere in America? I'm a naturalized U.S. citizen.
I think that's what called the First Amendment, right?
First Amendment. You know what the board members don't understand is they send police officers to my house, so guess what? I'm coming to their house, and I'm simply asking, okay, why in the world would you not respond to simple FOIA requests? And why would you not even return phone calls? You know, America today, we all have kids, we deserve the truth. And why in the world would you not tell the truth? My name is Wolfgang Halbig. I'm from Lake County, Florida, a town called Sorrento, Florida. I'm a national school safety consultant. For the last 25 years, I've traveled the country. And you look at me like I'm here today to create a problem. That's the last thing I want to do. You have an incident that happened on December 14, 2012. As tragic as it was, it got national attention, worldwide attention. I was one of the first people in my community to donate money to your cause. Let me tell you something, when tragedy strikes in any community, the first thing you can do is give money, because it takes money to heal.
What's the biggest red flag in your head with this whole Sandy Hook incident?
Well, you know, as I said in there, you know what, when this happened and it unfolded, I reached in my pocket and I send money. Guess what? We all send money. You know, this town collected $29 million from people from all across America because of the tragedy. I'm one of them. It's my pocket. And guess what? As a national school safety consultant, I couldn't believe. After a week, I'm going, no trauma helicopters? Who in the world is the incident commander who would not request the best medical care? Who would not let the paramedics and EMTs inside the school to treat the children of the parents? Why no trauma helicopters? Why would you not let paramedics, board members, these are your children, and you wouldn't let paramedics and EMTs into the building? You got 27 children declared dead within 8 minutes? Who does this? Who is so great at that job? And guess what? Not one parent has filed a lawsuit. This is un-American. In America, we file lawsuits. I was at Columbine, 14 children who died, every parent, okay, filed a lawsuit. 23 children were severely shot and severely injured. Every parent filed a lawsuit. Why haven't the parents here in Sandy Hook filed a lawsuit? It's
well, I guess people quoted that it was a big circus coming to town with a bunch of conspiracy theorists, right. Even though this is a direct onslaught on our Second Amendment, but we're a bunch of conspiracy theorists and we don't deserve to be here. Well,
and that's what people do here in Newtown. You know, today I was assaulted, I was battered by a fireman. I mean, can you imagine? I'm a visitor to a community. All I'm here, I actually went to the Newtown Police Department to say, I'd like to meet with Chief Kehoe. I wanted to make sure they knew we were in their town, make sure that we're not here to disrupt, we're not here to protest. We're simply asking, why have you not responded to our questions? I'm assaulted, I'm a visitor. Ladies and gentlemen, you are the board member, you are the leaders of this community, you are the superintendent. Respond. You have a great secretary. But guess what? I sense in her voice she's afraid. She's afraid to even call me back. That should not be happening in any school district. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here tonight not to disrupt the meeting. We want answers. We want truth. Part of character education that we teach our children, you are modeling responsibility, caring, and I'll quit. Thank you for letting her know. But ladies and gentlemen, character education is about caring, responsibility, honesty. And guess what? You're teaching your children. Why don't you do it the same way and respond? And I thank you for your time.
The thing is, if we're conspiracy theorists, we're quacks, right? They could simply answer our questions, right?
Absolutely. And guess what? They would never see Wolfgang Halbig at the board meeting. Had they not sent police officers to my home, not once, but they did it twice, Wolfgang Halbig wouldn't be here tonight. They would never hear of me.
Absolutely, and just like again, onslaught on the Second Amendment and also your First Amendment. I mean, that's not a violation of them intimidating you, using bullying tactics, typical police psychology tactics on you. You can't ask questions. You keep your mouth shut. Do what you're told. Submit to gun control because we're going to move it to a police state, not to USA, basically. And they expect us to keep our mouth shut, not ask questions. And your final thoughts.
Well, the final thoughts is every time I look at that flag up there, it says City of Newtown. I cannot believe the police chief of Newtown called the sheriff of Lake County, Florida, and had deputy sheriffs come to my house, and they wanted to know that if I ever come to Newtown, I need to check in. Now, what is that about? When do I have to check in? And then they asked me if I owned a handgun. What business is it of the city of Newtown or the police chief? What business is it whether I own a gun or not? And I have to sign in when I come? That's un-American.
Oh, it is. It's a typical police psychology. But anyway, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you very much.
And you're a hero to many of us. And God bless.
No, all of us. We need to have the truth. Thank you. Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, have you ever imagined you live in a country that you can't ask questions, then they onslaught our Second Amendment and utilize and put these poor kids, exploit them for their Nazi gun control. And this is Dan Bedandi for the Infowars Nightly News.
Well, that's it for tonight's news. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.